And we have to take action now before it's too late.
Today, we're in Aberdeen with a leader whose story defies convention. Jordan Ferguson left school at 15, started as an apprentice, worked onshore and offshore, became self-made by 24, and has since helped scale a group of companies to over 100 million valuation.
I'm not necessarily here for me. I'm here for my team. I'm here for my business. I'm here for my business partners. I'm here for the industry. I'm here for the next generation.
Now CEO of Pier Solutions, Jordan is engineering the energy transition, delivering modular solutions for battery energy storage, carbon capture, clean tech, and offshore wind, while also serving on the board of Neccus, Scotland's Alliance for Industrial Decarbonisation.
I mean, it doesn't take an educated person to work out that it's absolutely bonkers to try and shift a complete industry overnight without having the infrastructure there in place to do it.
But beyond business, Jordan has a passion for empowering the next generation, partnering with schools and community leaders to inspire young people with resilience, mindset, and purpose.
I almost think you have to be prepared to risk it all. If you're not, you're half in. I don't hear the noise because I choose not to. If I was to listen to the noise, I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Today, we sit down to talk about his journey, the highs, the lows, the lessons learned, and his unfiltered take on leadership, entrepreneurship, and the energy transition.
Success teaches you nothing. Failure teaches you everything.
Welcome to the Energy Executive 360 podcast with me, Emilio Falmata, and my guest, Jordan Ferguson. Jordan, thank you so much for welcoming me to Aberdeen. I really appreciate your time. And as you said, it's the first podcast you're doing, so it's an honor to be able to speak to you about your story.
All right, appreciate it, and it is, yeah.
Yeah. No, and to be honest, like I told you yesterday when we met at the airport, I've really been looking forward to this conversation because, you know, about a year and a half ago, I got into listening to podcasts like Diary of a CEO, Modern Wisdom, just to get inspiration and learn from the people that have, you know, done great things in their lives. And I think I take a lot of inspiration and knowledge from those people. And I think your story is the kind of story that I want to tell through the energy industry. And I guess in the future, I would like to have a story to tell as well. And so to start off, I want you to take me back to, you know, when you were 15, you left school at that age, you started as an apprentice, you work in oil and gas, you go offshore, onshore. And I believe you told me when we first spoke a couple of weeks ago, by 24, you were self-made. I think by 27, you lost it all. And now I think you're 38, and now you work with big companies like Jiva, Nova, Siemens, and you've scaled companies to 100 million plus. But my first question is going back to that 15-year-old kid. Did that 15-year-old kid always know what he was going to go on and do? Did you ever have any doubt?
Probably no doubt in my ambition or my dedication to it, but not necessarily knowing where the path's going to be. Mm-hmm. I didn't do too well in the school system. I wasn't focused on that. I wasn't really keen on the academic side of things. I liked the more practical piece. Mm-hmm. But I just suppose I always focused on learning new things, being interested in the things that I enjoyed, and applying that. But I didn't really understand that until I got into my late 20s. Yeah. I had an opportunity to take an apprenticeship because my mom basically was like, you're getting a job. And she basically said, right, you have to work. So my dad's old apprentice was looking for someone to join them. So I joined that in the heating and gas side of things. So started a 3 or 4 year apprenticeship with a plumbing heating company. Went to college, so that was 3 weeks at work, 3 weeks at college, which was good. Still met some friends there, which I keep in touch with today, but it wasn't really for me. I didn't truly enjoy that job, and I'm, you know, Neil may listen to this, he may not, but I hated every minute of it, I'll be honest. It just didn't seem like it was for me, but I had to do something to pay the bills. You know, I'd moved out, I was living alone.
At 15 years old?
At 16, 17. Yeah, so I had bills to pay. And you know, to earn a wage, so we just focused on. You know, trying my best and, you know, getting through the days, but always knew there was going to be something else that I wanted to do and something else I wanted to pursue. Didn't really fully necessarily understand there was an oil and gas market out there. It wasn't something that was. It wasn't something that was really. How do I describe it? It wasn't encouraged that much in our schooling system. You know, for being the oil capital of Europe. We didn't fully have the exposure to the oil and gas industry that was on our doorstep that we should have or could have had, which was a bit of a problem, I would say, because, you know, back then, you know, I'm 38 now, so you had the basic, you know, you want to be a fireman, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a joiner, you want to be a policeman. You know, that was the kind of careers that the career advisors was giving you advice on, not necessarily engineering in the oil and gas space, which should have been encouraged at that point. So I didn't really know that there was an industry or a career opportunity for me until I got into the working environment, which once I did understand that, that's where my sort of career path changed a little bit.
Yeah, and tell me where that ambition comes from, because I think when I think back to my journey, I've only really kind of got into that kind of click of wanting to build something for myself, have that kind of ambition since very like last year, so 21, 22. You said you had that since kind of like being 15. Obviously, you didn't have the path set out. I don't think anyone does. But where do you think that comes from at that early age?
I suppose that hustler mentality's in you, or it's not.
Yeah.
And it's your options or your opportunity to take advantage of it and really push yourself and not be afraid to put yourself out there and do it. I'm not going to say that I knew what path I was going to be on at all in any way, shape or form until I was probably about 28, you know, and I had a few people guide me in that journey and advise me, you know, and made mistakes in the past. You know, we all make mistakes, you know, chose the wrong paths in certain areas, but always came back around to do the right thing and focus on the right things as well. And hard work, you know, turn up, show up, put the effort in, you know, go the extra mile and apply yourself. You know, work till 11 o'clock at night. You know, put effort and consistent effort does pay off.
And where does that come from? That hustler mentality. I want to understand where people get that from, because I think I get that from seeing my mum work hard. You know, to give me that the best opportunities. Yeah. Where does that inner kind of hustler come from? When you look back in hindsight.
Possibly, my father's had the same job since he's been 16. So he's worked for the local council. My mum's been consistent in her career. Obviously, she brought us three up. I've got two brothers as well. But I don't really know. I mean, I suppose you know, my dad worked hard as we were children, provided for us as much as possible. It was maybe seeing other people have things that you didn't necessarily have, and then looking to try and achieve those things. And the only way you're going to do that is by yourself. You know, I don't have anyone else to fall back on, really. So, you know, my grandmother was in the pub trade for 57 years, retired when she was 81. You know, my grandfather was a postman, moved into singing in pubs and clubs and paid for the house that my grandma still lives in now. So possibly it come down from a generational thing, but I genuinely feel that it maybe come from my own, you know, a fire in my own belly that I wanted to push on and I wanted to drive things. And I knew I wasn't stupid. I wasn't good academically, but I had a bit of common sense and I was hungry. So having that hunger and that determination is and passion, regardless if you're good at something. If you do it long enough and you try hard enough, you will become good at it. You know, so in the various different careers I've had and the opportunities that I've been involved in, and I've always been an opportunist. You know, I'll look at something and it might not seem as a good idea at the time, but if you persevere with it and you focus on it, then it can be. You know, a perfect example of what you're doing now. And when we had a conversation in the car last night, you know, I didn't fully know or appreciate what, you know, the things and the sacrifices you've made to get to this point and to provide this platform for, you know, guests like myself to come on. And that's what's going to be the differentiator between you becoming successful and others not. So I think it's in you. And I think we need to be encouraging the younger generation more to do more of this and to be inspired by others and to be focused on their goals, their hopes, their dreams, their passions, and their motivations as well. Even though you might not necessarily fall into a system that's academically, you know, the criteria of being an academically successal. You know, I have no qualifications at all from an academic.
I mean, it says it all, yeah.
So maybe shouldn't admit that too much, right? But it hasn't stopped me from, from the definition of success is different between everyone, isn't it? Really, I mean, I'm only just getting started. You know, it's taken me, 20 years to get the knowledge, experience, and that to run teams, to make mistakes, to face the challenges, and then especially in an incredibly difficult and challenging market and a challenging economy as well.
Yeah, and I think from my experience, people put far too much emphasis on being intelligent beyond, like you said, being opportunistic. I think is way more important than being good at a table writing an essay, and that's what I've come to realize over time. And when I speak to my friends, I feel like they put a lot of emphasis on those kind of things. Where right now, I always say I like being the stupidest person in the room. As far as I'm concerned, there's more value in that than always thinking you're right.
Unfortunately, I'm the stupidest person in the room most of the time. We're certainly with the people that we work with sometimes.
Yeah. No, I doubt that. But I think you've touched on a lot of things there that I want to get into, and I want to ask you about your outlook on. I've got here risk, failure, belief, and luck. I think those are things that I love. I love thinking about, and I've become more introspective and reflective over the last year or two.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a success yet, but I truly believe that to have any chance of reaching any sort of success, you kind of have to believe the success is coming, even when all the evidence is on the contrary, you know? So how do you look at that kind of in hindsight in your life? How do you look at that idea of risk and believing in yourself before the evidence says it's coming?
I almost think you have to be prepared to risk it all. If you're not, you're half in. You have to be all in. I mean, I've almost lost it all a few times, you know. But that's what fuels that drive to make it a success, and that gives you, you know, if you have nothing else to fall back on, you will make that opportunity the one that is the one that you can choose that path to the success. Regards risk always has to be calculated. You have to. There's no one's ever taken a risk and not had a reward from it. You have a lesson, and those lessons that you can learn is experience. You have to have. Success teaches you nothing. Failure teaches you everything. Because if you have immediate success or you have overnight success, and I think that's where a lot of, you know, possibly musicians and you know influencers, etc., that have an immediate sort of overnight success, but it hasn't truly been earned, or they haven't faced any failure, then that's where they struggle with the challenges of it. You know, albeit I'm comparing that to a very different industry and different market. I came into an industry where I thought oil and gas was going to be my career for the rest of my life, and I was nervous of getting into that industry because I thought, you know, there was going to be a lot smarter people out there. I didn't know much. You know, I was given an opportunity with a business to work in nuclear robotics, for example. I knew absolutely nothing about nuclear robotics in any way, shape, or form. But they didn't hire me because I was the best nuclear robotics engineer. They hired me because of my attitude. And attitude over ability will always be the one that the person that is the front runner. You have to have the ability, but if your attitude's wrong, then you're going to fail. So looking at failure, you have to fail in order to succeed. No one that's ever been successful has not failed, in my opinion. And I don't get too distracted by observing and watching other people, because I'm concerned about what I'm doing with my team and the people that I'm around in the circle that I'm involved in, because I'm not too distracted by others and other people's success. Yeah, I'll take inspiration from it and appreciation, but we have to be focused on what we're doing and what in the circle that we're involved in as well. What was the other one?
Luck.
Luck.
I didn't really ask you about luck yet. I was going to ask you, so I was having this conversation a couple of days ago. Okay. And I disagreed with the person. I said luck doesn't really exist. I think you leverage your own luck. I think luck does exist, but I think the more risk you take, the luckier you get, and I think you can leverage it. You know,
I think you put your position in to be lucky. Exactly. You know, you have to have an element of luck. You know, be at the right place at the right time, have the right conversation with the right person, offer the right solution at the right time. You know, have the right product at the right time, be current at the right time. And all these elements feed back into a bit of luck. But you do create your own luck. You know, if you consistently push that focus, then, you know, luck will ultimately follow that.
Let's go back to those moments you said you almost lost everything a couple of times.
Well, didn't almost, pretty much did.
Okay, so tell me about it. What's the situation? How do you pick yourself up? If there's someone going through a similar position at the moment, what's the framework?
Don't lose the hope. There's always somebody in a worse position, and don't be ashamed and don't be scared to ask people around you for help. You know, and don't allow yourself to continue to fake things that aren't necessarily working. You know, and don't let your pride take over that either, I would say. I mean, it's difficult to go back to like thinking about those times and those challenges, because, you know, you make mistakes, you know, you go on the wrong path, you then come out of that, you then build up a little bit of success. Success always comes with someone that's also willing to try and take it from you, which a lot of people don't necessarily want to talk about. You know, nobody likes a lot of people to be successful or wants to champion them. That's one thing that you do experience, and that's where you've got to not focus on that negativity or those people that are negative and around your life. And I would advise to cut them off as quickly as possible. But I would say, how do you get yourself out of it? The only way out of it is out of it. So there's only one way, and it's pushing on and trying new things, maybe taking a bit of, you know, being humbled with it, and that becoming humble I went back into a position where I was ultimately just purely working for commission for someone, a challenging individual to say the least, but it taught me a lot, and I had to work extra hours of the day, night, and do whatever it took to make sure that I was in that constant position, because I knew if we landed something or we did a deal, I had a paycheck at the end of that. And that was the difference of me getting out of I went from living in a nice apartment and things like that, having cars, to then running out of money pretty fast and being back in my father's house.
And what do you learn from that experience?
That my dad's cooking's terrible. No, you learn from that experience where it's like when you're at the bottom, the only way is up. So if you're staring down from the bottom of that barrel, the only way is to come out of it is to look up, and you either build that ladder or you climb back up.
And through that whole journey, you said you only really found your kind of calling or your purpose at like 28.
I wasn't sensible enough until then.
Yeah, what drove you up to that point to keep going? Like beyond what we've spoken about, what was kind of the purpose and the mission at that point?
Genuinely, I would say I wouldn't have the attitude I had now if it wasn't for the people that were around me at the time supporting it and pushing me to say, you can be better, you're better than this, you've got the character, that people automatically like or dislike, whatever one you want to choose. I don't necessarily really care, because I have the people around me that do care and do know me, and that's another thing. People can speculate all they want and things like that, but I know who's true and who's genuine. But having those people and you don't necessarily hear them at that point until you look back and you go, I'm fortunate to have really good people around me at that time that were saying, you need to focus and you could be so much better. But also were there to go, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why are you risking all this? But it does ultimately pay off. In time. Consistency pays off. And consistently doing something over time does pay off.
Yeah. And who were those people? Because you said something very interesting about getting rid of the people that aren't helping you, but keeping the people that are helping you close. Yeah. So how do you know who are those people?
My ex-wife would be one for sure. I have to, I can't come on camera or come on the podcast and not say that she wasn't a big influence on that. And just having that supportive network there, family, friends, brothers, and just continually saying, seeing that you're good at something, or you have, or asking you, how do you do this, or how did you do that? I think having those people constantly remind you to do it, but as you believe in yourself. That's where I would say that I was thankful at that point, where I did where I had a sort of pivot. And then I took a step back and I went and worked offshore and took a year out, and I think I did 316 days offshore. I was a friend of mine phoned.
How many?
316.
300 without coming back?
No, you have to. Okay. You can't legally do that. But we ultimately did some land trips, so did some offshore trips. But a friend of mine had called, and I needed a break at that point. I'd kind of been working in something that was incredibly successful. We made a lot of good traction from that. It was an incredibly interesting business to work with. I traveled around the world, working with some major companies, etc. We broke that products and market into Europe, which was really good. But I ultimately was burning out. So I went and worked offshore for 316 days and for a break. And during that time, I'd got into, maybe jump around here, but I'd had a little bit of success doing some acquisitions and deals. And I'd sold a software package to BP for a company that was acquired from an individual that I worked with. And I liked that process. And I realized that process was something that I enjoyed. So what I did when I went offshore was I was never going for the offshore career. It was always to ultimately put food on the table, make some money, pay the bills. But I studied mergers, acquisitions, and transactions on my spare time because I knew that studying that was going to get me off that platform. And that's a great career for a lot of people, and a fantastic career that people have managed to build a lot of success on. It just wasn't fit for me. I knew it was a temporary stopgap, and it was a platform that I was using as a stepping stone.
I'm definitely like that I try, like we spoke about yesterday, I try doing things alongside my job that can advance my career in different aspects. What's your advice to people, maybe young people like me, that maybe are scared to take that like literal step into uncertainty, into doing something which they don't know what the ROI is going to be. Because I think often you're kind of shooting in the dark. You're shooting in a general direction, but it's often in the dark, and you're waiting to hit, something before you kind of pounce on it. So what's your advice to people in that kind of stage?
I mean, don't be scared. Do it. I've just done it recently. With something we'll probably come on to that later, but don't be scared to do it. And find those supporters and find those people that are championing you, because if you have that mindset to do it, it's only you that can fail it, because your own mindset is the driver of that. If you think you're failing, then you'll give up. But you don't necessarily understand it when you're in it. It's difficult to feel that it's difficult to feel that you're achieving the goals when you're actually delivering them. Yeah. Because you don't sit back and appreciate it. And that's maybe something I haven't been very good at, is actually appreciating the success, because I've always been so focused on continuing that and the next thing, and also being young in the industry and looking, we come from an industry, it was probably older, sort of male-driven industry, certainly when I came into it. So you're always looking at all and age doesn't necessarily mean that you're credible, because credible experience doesn't have to come from age. Yes, knowledge and experience, etc., does come from being in doing something for a period of time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have the skill sets and the attitude and, again, the mindset to do it. So I would say anyone that, and we've done some programs with Inspire the Next Generation to ensure that this younger generation's coming and taking a risk, but you have to show up. You can't be half into it. It's not going to work if you're half in. If you go all into it and you show up, you turn up, it will be a success.
Now, I've seen you've been doing, you do quite a lot of work with the younger generation. Yeah. How can someone build that mindset? Because I think that's something you build over time. It's not just flick a switch and then you believe in yourself and it works. What framework could someone use to kind of reframe failure to like development moving forward? Because it's not always clear that you're moving forward.
Well, I think this is something that doesn't really get taught in the schooling system. And that's why we did a program last year with a local school here, St. Macher Academy, where I brought an individual along, Luke Staten, a fantastic individual who's dedicated his whole life to, inspiring that next generation and going to, ex-professional football player, career cut short. He was back home at his parents' house after playing in Champions League, etc., and then had to start again. He decided to dedicate his life to inspiring the younger generation and dealing with failure and dealing with, your dreams might not be the dream that you're living today, but the dream that you're pursuing could be the one that you're living tomorrow. So we did a program. I met him a couple of years ago and just thought, this is something or someone I want to bring to the Northeast. And I'd always had a little bit of passion for working with the children in the school and systems that might not necessarily have the same start or the equal start as everyone else. They might be a little bit challenged, maybe fall into the wrong crowds, etc. But it's not to say that they're the ones that aren't going to be, our next generation of future leaders. Because, you do mature, you do get older, at that age, when everything's your friends and everything's about impressing people and, chasing girls or chasing, football and whatever it might be, you're not interested in what your future career is going to be, because you might not necessarily have those people or those mentors to guide you. But if we can have a small bit of inspiration, even if it's a handful of people, that'll make a change for the future. And I think maybe, I understand that, budgets and schooling systems are not, but we're teaching a dated curriculum. We're teaching a curriculum that's out of date, certainly in the mainstream schooling system. So if we can potentially input a little bit of mindset, a little bit of motivation, a little bit of passion, a little bit of purpose, a little bit of self-belief, that skills are what teach you in life. Those are the skills that enable you to be a better person. Those are the skills that enable you to hold a conversation. Those are the skills that enable you to believe in yourself. Those are the skills that enable you to go out there and take a risk and do something a bit different. Now, not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur or whatever the tagline that you want to put on. I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest. No, I just, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur until you're in it. Everyone wants the job until you've got it. And it's not all glamorous, it's not all flying around the world in fancy hotels eating dinners. Occasionally it can be, but it's not always like that. You know, it is 14 hours a day, every day. You know, I've not had a day off since last October. And even the days I have had off, I've still been working. That's what you have to put in. That's the commitment. And, you know, I'm involved in something. You know, we're running a multi-million-pound business just now. So that's the commitment that you have to do. And no one sees the sacrifices when you go home.
Yeah. No, so I want to ask you about as well is the idea of perception. And I think that ties in both on a personal level and regarding the energy industry as well. So I think it's a good double-edged sword question to ask. So I read a book called The Courage to Be Disliked. A lot of people read it. And essentially it says that all problems stem from interpersonal relationships and that freedom comes from not needing external validation. And one thing you said yesterday was that you don't hear the noise. You don't hear the naysayers. And that's basically what that book says, that you just have to shut out everything and choose the right battles to take on. How does someone do that? How do you do that? How do you keep the noise out?
I used to worry about it. I don't now. Well, I don't hear the noise because I choose not to. I choose to focus on the people who I hear the good things from, or focus on the people that are there and the clients that are supportive and the mentors or the circle of friends that you've got who will, you know, who'll take the you out of a little bit, you know, and things like that. And I'm going to get it taken out of me for this 100%. You know,
I am as well.
Don't be under any illusion that I'm fully aware of what I'm putting myself up to here. But the thing is, I've got to get a message. I mean, I think you know, I'm sharing a story that's just starting. You know, so you know, let's have share the journey. Where are we going to be in 10 years? You know, I look at it takes a long time to build your craft. And I mean, I'm learning every single day. I face challenges every day. If I was to listen to the noise, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. Yeah. If I was to worry about what people thought. But my message is, I'm not necessarily here for me. I'm here for my team. I'm here for my business. I'm here for my business partners. I'm here for the industry. I'm here for the next generation. You know, I'm here for the people that need that. I know I don't want the fame. I'm not necessarily someone who chases fame. I've got no interest in it. I've got no interest in social media, and other than if it's for, you know, promoting the business, etc. But I've got no interest in personally being validated by the public, other than the ones who want to support and want to believe in what we're doing. And I think that's an incredibly strong message, because this is and I'm fortunate not to see too much of it, but this is a vicious world. Nobody wants to champion the next person coming through. And I've seen some horrible things recently. And the world's full of negativity. You know, I don't watch the news. I haven't watched the news since 2008 because there's nothing positive on the news.
Never anything positive.
They want to promote this negative narrative consistently. So we're always, if you're putting that poison into your brain consistently, you're never going to waken up and go, I can't wait to chase my dreams today. So if that's the first thing that you do, then you change your pattern because you're doing it wrong. You know, so I don't watch the news. I don't get bogged down by social media. I don't chase the next fashion trends. I think I'm fashionable enough. And so I don't hear the noise, because you don't need to hear the noise when you've got good people around you. That's a lesson I learned, you know, and I've learned that lesson, you know, the wrong way over the last, you know, few years as well, is picking the wrong people. Not everyone's got your back. Not everyone's got your objectives in mind, and everyone sometimes has a potential agenda for themselves. It's the skill is to not spend too much time wasting it on those people. But those are lessons that you have to learn. There's lessons that you have in life. The friends that you have now might necessarily be the friends that you have in 10 years. You know, your friend circle gets smaller as you get older, but I would say the people that you value becomes larger.
Yeah, and it's that idea between perception and the perception of other people have of you and the reality you have of yourself. I think that's a good way I would frame it. And similarly, moving on to kind of now into energy, I think you mentioned you're here for your team, for your business, for the industry. Yeah, I would say I'm here for the industry. I'm only 23, but I would say I'm here for the industry to try and give a different perspective on it. And of course, I think we live in a world where perception definitely matters more than reality. And I think the energy industry is definitely being a victim of that in a way. Yeah. And not only a victim, because I think the industry has done an awful job at marketing itself, for the lack of a better word. So how do you see this, the perception, the difference between the perception of the industry from outside of energy to the actual reality of what the industry is to our world?
Well, there's been a massive lack of education on it. I mean, I think there's people making judgments, making decisions on uneducated terms. That goes for policy and government makers, depending on how controversial that's going to be. But, we are struggling as an industry. We're importing our energy that we need, that we require, when we have our recoverable reserves sitting on our doorstep. It's bonkers. Yes, I'm all for the transition. Yes, I'm for working towards net zero. Yes, I'm for working for more sustainable technologies to be reducing our carbon footprint. Of course. Why wouldn't we want our planet to be a lot greener and last longer and fulfill as much as we can in our time? But we still have a practicality of it. There's a common sense approach needs to be taken here. We've rushed into certain things without actually fully looking and analysing the facts that are required to do that. And that's not my opinion, that's a fact. And it doesn't take long for you to be involved in this industry to understand that. We're killing our economy right now while we still have the requirement for oil and gas. And not just oil and gas, it's not just a case of the fuel that fills the cars. It's the plastics, it's the 40 plus other products that are supplied and delivered from one barrel of oil that we don't see. The microphone, the plastics that are here, the cable that's in that. That doesn't come from recyclable products that are in the ground. This comes from a produced product that we spend. There's a whole economy that thrives and relies on that. And if we continue to do that, we're a small 1% emitter in the world, and we're the most advanced, or one of the most advanced, or used to be, of engineering technologies in the world. You go anywhere, when I was traveling around in my late 20s and going to different parts of the world and speaking to different people, they all knew where Aberdeen was. We're the oil capital of Europe. And we were proud to say that. Now it's a dirty word.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we're supposed to be ashamed of it. Well, why you're not supposed to be ashamed of something that's needed, that's required. And I think there's more education needed on how we transition and how we, if you talk about the way we're trying to transition, it's not sustainable. It's not financially viable, and it's not economically proven yet. So we're trying to do something without fully understanding what the facts and what ultimately what the repercussions are going to be of that over the long period of time. That's what worries me a little bit. And working in this, we've transitioned our business from 90 to 100% oil and gas over the few years to about almost switched that. We're about 75, 30, maybe 75, 25, something along that. It would be difficult to fully put those figures on. But in the sustainable, battery energy storage, clean energy, climate tech, etc., we've transitioned our business into that. But if I fully focused our business on renewables, we wouldn't have a business. And we proved that last year. There's in hydrogen, you talk about hydrogen. Hydrogen's too expensive just now. There's 1,286 global hydrogen projects right now. I think 50% of them aren't funded, and 50% of them are R&D, and 30% aren't funded yet. So it's a difficult market to push when it's not there. It doesn't fully exist yet because we've tried to transition overnight without having the education that's needed to do that. And I got that the wrong way around, by the way. I think there's 50% aren't funded, and only 30% is feasibility, and 20% are R&D type stages. There's statistics change all the time. I think we need more education. We need more education at a government level, and they also need to pay more attention to the facts that are there.
Yeah, and quite simply, I think people get confused about what the energy transition really means. So simply, what is your definition of the energy transition, and what does it look like? We've got oil and gas is going to be, whether people want to admit it or not, is going to be part of the energy mix for as far as we can look going forward. And give us an insight into all the technologies you've worked in. So hydrogen, you've worked with carbon capture, you've mentioned battery energy storage systems. What stage are these technologies at the moment? Because people want these to come in immediately. But we're talking about, it's the affordability aspect, the reliability aspect. How long are we talking until these can really come into a mainstream?
I mean, that's a question that's far above my ability. But I think from what I can give from my experience, the battery energy storage, our grid is the biggest problem. We're trying to produce all this energy that our grid doesn't have the capacity to take. we're also trying to transition to technologies that aren't fully established and not proven. You know, we need a combination of them all. Yes, they all have a place, but they all have a place at what cost? You know, as the taxpayer, you know, are we supposed to carry that burden? You know, if anything, our bills should be going down. If we're creating more sustainable, cleaner, greener technologies, surely our bills should be going down. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but my bills are going up. So, you know, we're making statements and we're making claims and we're making commitments that we're not fully aware that we can do yet. But it's all right to make a commitment to 2050, because making that commitment while you're sitting in office right now, you're not going to be around to deliver it. So but that burden's on our future generation. But we're carrying that pain right now because we're not, you know, we're starving our industry of investment. We're starving our industry of attracting inward investment to those markets. We are relying on technologies that aren't fully proven yet, but also forgetting about the engineering and the expertise that we have within an industry that's current, mm-hmm. that we should be using that to transition into. So my take on the energy transition is it's taking traditional energy methods and looking at more sustainable, cleaner, greener ways to do that. Mm-hmm. We should be maximizing economic recovery the most sustainable way we possibly can, right? We should be and reinvesting that money, that the high tax brackets that are put on all the operators, and reinvesting that into the clean technologies.
So you're saying taking revenues from oil and gas and putting it into all these technologies we're speaking about.
That's what was happening. But if you starve the operators and you put big tax brackets on them, there's no incentive for them to continue to invest in these technologies, nor is there the workforce there to be able to do it. You know, there's a gap. You know, we've had ups and downs within the industry, certainly, you know, well before my time as well. You know, I'm not sitting here like some industry veteran in any shape or form. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm only sitting here from my current experience and what in the front line that I'm currently at. You know, we are really focusing on the battery energy storage side of things, the grid, the utilities piece, working with clients that are looking to modularize, containerize, and, you know, get a bigger output from a smaller footprint in these sort of technical solutions. So we're actively working with all of the companies that we can to try and do this. But there's so much red tape, there's regulations, there's approvals, there's willingness to adopt things onto the market. There's a want and a need, but there's not necessarily a demand. Mm-hmm. You know, because there's not always going to be a demand. I mean, hydrogen, for example, you know, I've worked in hydrogen for about 5 years now. And yes, hydrogen can be used as a fuel, of course. It's being used as a fuel right now. It's too expensive to produce, it's too expensive to store, and it's too expensive to transport. You know, we need to be looking at ways, but we can't just switch off the taps, you know, to our reliable resources that we do have, that we can rely on, that we know work, and just assume that we can go overnight. Yes, the EV cars, etc., are coming more mainstream. They're becoming more affordable now, but you've got the grid capacity to worry about. If every single car in the street was on EV and they were charging, we would crash our grid.
Mm-hmm. No, I always think the debate around EVs, and I have this with my family, and I actually had it going to the train station a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how the Chinese EVs are actually great now. Yeah. You know, they've got really good technology, and we were talking about the tariffs, and you know, and my uncle said, why do you think we've got the tariffs on? Of course, because we want to create our own industry. Of
course.
But I said the reason we don't have the technology they have at the moment is because they started investing 20 years ago. Yeah. When we were saying, oh no, EVs are never going to work.
We're trying to catch up.
Yeah, and it's going to be impossible to catch up. So I think it's people. My point there is that people don't realize how the energy transition is what it says on the tin. It's a transition. It's progression over time. Yes. If we want to see a proper change, it's not here to 5 years. It's not here to 10 years. Not even here to 20 years. It's here to 50. You know, and I think that's where the narrative has gone wrong. And it just needs to be more pragmatic. You know, you can't have anything in life overnight, right? You can't suddenly become buff. You've got to go to the gym for 2 years, or you know. So I think applying that simple logic would really help people understand. It's a frustration for me because I think it's quite obvious. Yeah. And I think the industry needs to do better at getting that message across, because it's not a, and like you said, we shouldn't be scared of saying we're oil and gas people, we're this, we're that. I think it's we're all going towards the same goal, essentially, right?
We shouldn't be embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
We should be. There's so much technologies come from that. There's so much fantastic engineers around the world. We should be proud of that industry as a collective. It didn't. Nobody said it was energy transition overnight, but that's what the expectation almost is, because 10, 20 years is not a long time to reverse an industry that's taken that's taken 50, 60 years to develop. You can't just transition that overnight, and there's much better people to answer that question than me. But I see it firsthand. I see the damage that it causes. I see the uncertainty that it causes.
The narrative.
Yeah. And you open the paper occasionally when you see them, or you go on and read a feed, and you're like, are these government officials paying absolutely zero attention? Are they not? Do they not have eyes and ears? Can they not see what's going on? I mean, it doesn't take an educated person to work out that it's absolutely bonkers to try and shift a complete industry overnight without having the infrastructure there in place to do it. And that's where the problem is. We weren't set up to make the commitments that we did. We didn't have the infrastructure in place to transition in this period that we've set. But do I agree we should be looking at? 100%, of course I do. I think it's necessary. We have to do that. We have to look at ways that we can improve the quality of the planet. We have to look at ways that we can make energy more sustainable. We have to look at ways that we can be more, if you look at now, look how much stuff you recycle. 10 years ago, that wasn't such a thing. Now we'd recycle, 4 different things. You got your food waste, you got your cardboards, you got your... That's a great thing, because we should be using materials again. We should be having that circular economy of reusing things. We're too focused, too much of a wasteful culture. But yes, I agree, that should be something that's worked on and we should be focused on. But there's a reality of how achievable is it, really? How achievable is it when you look at the facts? And unfortunately, I sit in too many rooms with too many people saying the same thing. And we have to take action now before it's too late, before we're trying to reverse back. And we've lost all the skill set. We're trying to outsource it to other countries, and we're desperate and we're on the back foot. So we need to take action now. One of the reasons I'm doing this, is to say, we need a voice. We need all our voices to be heard. If all of us are shouting the same message, eventually we will be heard. Yeah.
And how can the industry take hold of that narrative? So I think ultimately we're in a business, right? So I guess people that sell solar panels want to sell more solar panels. People that are in the oil and gas business want to sell more oil and gas. So in theory, we're all in competition with each other. But I think with the emergence of AI, with rising energy demand, there's plenty of space for everyone. We're going to need everything, as you said. We're in the era of the energy addition, not the energy transition.
Of course.
So how can we get the industry to finally back one united narrative? Because I think that's my mission. Really.
I don't think we should all be competing. I think we should be collaborating. The solar guys can't make solar panels without oil and gas. How are they making the products and parts and components? You need oil and gas.
And then you can go back to the idea.
They're not going and clipping solar panels off of trees, are they?
Yeah.
So you need the oil and gas to support that infrastructure and that industry. And you need I don't necessarily think we should be competing. We should all be looking to collaborate on how that can be done as a collective. There's a big divide between facts and reality. There's too much people go up on stage, talk a lot of nonsense, and ultimately, don't really fully know what, they're not close enough to it. They're not in it. They're not worked in it. They come from public sector support, and they're the ones that are tasked with making the policy. No, I'm not sitting here disgruntled, and I've had some great support from government, still do to this day. But I think the ones who make the policies and the ones who write the sort of policies and the ones who are enforcing this change on us, right, and strangling the companies who have the budgets, and to invest and reinvest in R&D and reinvest in technology, really need to pay attention to what they're actually doing, and that's what I worry about, and that's where I worry about the future of the industry, because other countries aren't. We're naively maybe, do I want to say arrogantly, trying to force something on a small country we're a speck in this big planet. We're a small little speck that, that maybe sometimes governments are a little bit big for their trousers, and we don't fully appreciate that, we have an influence as a small country, but other countries, you went in the data centers there. I'm going to use that because our requirement for data now, everyone's using ChatGPT. There's not a person that isn't using ChatGPT for something, whether that is creating, images of friends and superimposing them, onto something funny, or using it to help you write a paper, or using it to tidy up a document, using it to ask a question that you might have referred to Google in the past. That requires a huge amount of data. Well, how do you think that data is produced? It requires power. It requires, those data centers aren't just running on fresh air. They require electricity. They require power, and a huge amount of it to operate.
I've said this a couple of times in the interviews that I've done so far. I think the emergence of AI has really brought this idea to the fore, the necessity of energy. So I think that started the narrative going. So I think this is a good time to be having these conversations, to be honest. And something I want to ask you about, specifically about Pier Solutions, is that your motto line is engineering the energy transition. What do you mean by engineering the energy transition?
Well, I think for what we're doing at Pier is we wanted to provide a platform where you could come to us, whether that be from design and engineering to manufacturing, production or assembly, to service or fit out, or to product, that we were able to provide a full turnkey solutions in supporting the delivery of the energy transition. And that's why we use that tagline is, we're an agnostic business. We can cater to any industry. At the end of the day, we're engineers. We build things, we service things, we integrate it, and we deliver it. And that's where I think, providing the platform as a business to support these companies that are emerging technologies or delivering the sustainable battery energy storage, or supporting the grid, or taking that surplus wind power that can't be distributed on the grid, and then storing it and then distributing it on. That's where we're providing that platform of support, or hoping to, as we continue to grow. We're relatively in our infancy in that space, but we're fortunate to work with some major OEMs, major developers, and major operators, and that's where we're continuing to do as a business. I think it's incredibly important to support all areas of that business and be able to provide yourself as a full sort of solutions provider. We are not experts in everything, but we are good at what we know, what we can do, and we're learning and improving that and building that business opportunity daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. So what it means to me and what it means to the team is ensuring that I can build future-proof business for both myself, my stakeholders, my employees, the team, and our clients as well.
And you said before you're 38 and you're only just getting started. You said it's taken you 20 years to get all the skills you need to really go on and push on. So what I think to go on and do good things or big things, you have to have a sense of purpose and mission, right? So moving forward, where are you getting your sense of purpose, and what's your mission moving forward?
Taking on the challenges that people don't necessarily probably want or need. Where's my purpose? I think now I'm in the position where I've got enough experience to lead teams and to lead a business forward, and that's not get flustered, not get too stressed. You're going to have problems. We're an operational business. You have problems every day, right? But it's choosing what problems or what battles to fight. Choose your battles. And, also patience is something that I've learned over a long period of time. I didn't necessarily have I was blessed with handsome, good looks and witty charm. Patience wasn't something I was given. No, patience in not trying to do things too quick. We're all trying to get things done, but understanding that patience sometimes allows things to naturally happen. The universe is a wonderful place. It all falls in place eventually. And don't get me wrong, there's days, weeks, months where it doesn't feel like it's happening. I still feel that, recently, we constantly face challenges. We've got some new plans over the next couple of weeks, etc. It's been an incredibly stressful and challenging time, but we move forward. And you put yourself in that position. It gives you purpose. it gives you that belief, and it gives you that passion. Those things fuel the next stages. So I would say, what gives you purpose? I mean, it's a difficult question, and you've had me question this in my own head a few times now, because I don't necessarily fully know. What I couldn't give you a straight answer to that. If I was going to be honest, I could give you some, but I genuinely don't know. I just know that I have a purpose, and I feel right now that this is it.
I think that's quite powerful. I think from my perspective, even starting this podcast is I told you some of the interviews I've organized have been last minute, and that's been the most exciting bit, thinking, is it going to come through? Is it not? And I thought, oh, maybe not. And then it does,
Yeah.
And it's, that's the exciting thing,
But it gives you that excitement, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Like, and understanding what you're, last night having a conversation when we were driving on the road, and what you're trying to achieve, I think is very admirable, and that's what's inspired me to kind of sit here and do this, and, I might be right, I might be wrong, all I can do is give my opinion on it, and, the cameras go off, the microphones go off, and I go back to the day job. But what I have done is maybe I've left a small mark that someone sits and listens and goes, you know what, maybe one day I want to learn a bit more, I want to understand a bit more. Or I've got a client that sits and goes, what do Pier Solutions do? Or you've got someone who goes, I like what Emilio's doing, I'm gonna reach out, I want to understand what he's doing, I want to listen to his podcast, I want to see what he's talking about, because we all need energy. These bright lights that are there, the cameras, the timer, everything relies on energy. We need that from somewhere. So putting a podcast out based on energy, I think is incredibly admirable. And I think it's incredible to do it at this time where it's such a challenging and unknown market really right now, and what direction we're going. Because we can go in many different directions in this. Not all of them are going to be right, and not all of them are going to be wrong. But we're going to be going in the direction of somewhere, where we have to go somewhere, and it could be a combination of a few.
No, I think it's so interesting because in every region of the world is going in a different direction, because the transition looks different in every sector of the world.
Or not. It doesn't. Some of them aren't even adopting it yet because they don't need to, or they don't want to, and they don't have to.
Yeah. No, and the one thing you mentioned there is that it's over the 20 years you now feel ready to lead and to really push forward a business. Tell me about that process of learning to lead teams, learning to lead people. Obviously, the definition of company is actually a group of people. So, what have you learned over the last 20 years about leadership? And let me frame it like this: if you had to write a book about leadership and what it takes, maybe what would be your three key key principles, maybe that you think are the most important, and what would you call the book? Have you ever thought of writing a book?
I'll probably do an audiobook more than writing one. Maybe in another 10 years. Once I feel maybe that I've achieved what I would like to have achieved, possibly, and maybe there might be something in that helps someone or avoids someone making certain mistakes that I've made, or choosing the wrong path, choosing the wrong people. There could be a few things within that. What I would say is attitude. Always hire attitude over ability, unless it's for something very specific. But the attitude over ability is something that I've learned over the years that is incredibly important. And you can never anticipate what people are going to do. Never be surprised by people. Always be prepared to be underwhelmed, but also surprised at the same time. Because certain people who you expect certain things from aren't necessarily the ones that you do. Reward and recognize people where rewarded recognition is required, because people always want. I think when you've got teams, there's always people that are quietly in the background doing more than you expect or you think, and just ensure that you pay attention to them. I try and make sure that I speak to everyone that I can. I try and be approachable. I try and not take things too serious, until it's time to take things seriously, of course. I try and bring a bit of fun to things as well. We've got to have a bit of fun. You're working with people 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day, whatever it might be. You've got to have fun. And you've got to enjoy each other's company, and you've got to all have the same purpose. And also, some people won't make that journey, but the bus is going in that direction. Not everyone's going to be on it at the end of it, but don't worry about it, because naturally that course is going to take its action. So surround yourself with a good team. identify those individuals quickly
Mm-hmm.
and champion them.
Mm-hmm.
Never micromanage. Don't be too controlling. But set clear boundaries and set clear guidance and set a clear strategy on what your expectations are.
Mm.
And I mean, that's my only advice I would give, whether I'm doing it right or wrong. And also reassess the situation. Understand your own strengths and weaknesses. You know, I came from working sort of self-employed and contracting and consulting into a few companies, helping supporting global businesses, etc., and not running in big teams for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go and check what my strengths and weaknesses were when I came in. And, you know, we came into a business that was in a bit of distress, that needed needed a restructure, you know, from the ground up. And that's a challenge, especially when you're trying to get a motivated team that didn't necessarily know you from before. So that's the challenges that you've got to accept. And you're not going to always make the right decisions. You know, I've made multiple wrong decisions over the last period of time of running this recent business, but it all sorts itself out in the end if you continue to focus on that clear strategy and those clear objectives.
Mm. And what about leading in an industry like energy, which is so volatile? It seems that every day there's a different regulation. Every day something's different. The price of a barrel of oil goes up and down every day.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? You said, you know, you've got to know how to deal with the ups and downs.
Yeah.
An energy industry is very much like that. How do you deal with that?
Know your craft. Like, pay attention. It's all free and available online. Pay attention to the things that matter. Understand your industry. I would say focusing on the things that you can do rather than what you can't.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things are out with our control.
Yeah.
So you can't control things that aren't out with your control. But what you can do is you can control your approach to these things. You can control how the team adapt and how the team react to these things. Keep calm. If I was running around stressed and panicked, then I would expect everyone else to be running around stressed and panicked. You know, leadership comes from a calm, clear, and precise guidance. And that's something I've learned as well. You know, I've had to learn to be a lot more calmer, a lot more clear in my instruction, and be a lot more mature in my approach to those things as well. You know, yeah, I'll run around the office, you know, singing songs and maybe shouldn't admit this for HR, but, you know, I'm shooting people with Nerf guns, etc. But, you know, but that brings a fun approach to things, you know, and I expect people to be able to be a bit more comfortable, but when it's time to get the job done, it's time to get the job done, you know?
I think having that balance seems like the key, you know?
Yeah.
Have people comfortable, but...
Well, we're all human at the end of the day, you know? I'm human as well, you know? I have my ups and downs, my good days, my bad days, you know, but you have to put on a strong front and you have to support each other. You have to be united and you have to have each other's back. You know, and that works for small teams and for big teams. It doesn't work if every player is trying to play in a different direction, you know? So that's my only, I would say, guidance or input to that. But every day I learn something new, learn something different. We change be willing to change your structure or tactic depending on where the focus can be as well, if that makes any sense. Like, be adaptable, be dynamic. And that I think has a bit of I would say an influence on how you can successfully lead or manage a team. And, you know, you're going to have people that let you down. Just, that's life. Deal with it, right? But also you're going to have people that also pick you up as well.
And one thing we spoke about near the beginning was about inspiring the next generation, you know, in terms of having that sense of belief and that mindset which is conducive to progress and forward movement in life. But also one of the reasons I want to do this podcast is I don't see many young people in energy, you know?
That's a shame.
Yeah, and I always say that the way I probably...
I'm young.
I think, you're probably one of the younger people that
Our team are young.
met. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? We're a young team as a business.
I agree. Yeah, but like you said at the beginning, it's the industry's got that kind of perception of being an old white-haired man. You know, how can we get more young people into energy? Because I always say it's the foundation of human life, and through this podcast, I want to make people realize how important it is. And if you want to be in an industry which can affect everything in our world, this is the industry to be in. You can make a real difference.
What you're doing, you're doing it, aren't you?
Trying to do it.
Well, by bringing something like this to the platforms that you are, you're bringing the or the next generation into this. I would also say I welcome anyone. If anyone ever wants to come out and see what we're doing, you know, albeit on their own time, on our time, whatever, my doors are open. You know, come and see what we're doing. Come and share. I'm always happy to have a conversation. We need to be. I think the education system needs to be working more with companies, the schooling systems, the local councils. They need to be taking more of an interest, and they need to be taking more action on what can be brought in. And this is not at the latter stages of the schooling systems. This is from the beginning. You know, give them opportunities. Show. You know, there used to be a lot of career fairs and things like that went on, and a lot of companies used to go and showcase what they're doing and what their operations are, what their business is about. I don't know if that happens as much now, which is sad, because I know there's a lot of younger generations of individuals now, whether they're leaving school, you know, next summer, whether they're going through exams, who don't necessarily know what career path to take. But there is an industry out there. You know, we have a shortage. We have electrical service business. There's about 100,000 shortage of high voltage engineers right now in the world, possibly more. We cannot get people. We cannot get good people, right? That's the kind of message that needs to get us out. Hey, you know, guys, girls, go into the electrical service side of things. We're always going to need power, you know? But that's not necessarily just going and delivering the job. There's the whole sort of project support team that's involved in that, from document control to running the projects to procuring to buying to servicing. You know, there's a range of different careers within that one discipline. I think sending that message and being clear on what that is, you know, and that's something we did try and do, you know, when we did the Inspiring the Next Generation at St. Margaret Academy. You know, we brought 5 companies with us, all different, you know, specialist inspection system from ASIS Offshore. We brought my own company, Pier Solutions. We brought an accountant and wealth management business, because you have to manage your money. You know, nobody teaches young children how to manage their money. You know, the first thing is they want to consume. They want money to buy things and consume it rather than invest it in the future. You've taken that approach. You've not went off and bought, you know, £1,000 pair of trainers and posted it on Instagram. You've went and bought kit. You've paid for flights. You've paid for podcast sessions. You've reinvested that money in yourself, and you've reinvested that money in your business, in your platform. You know, these are the messages that we need to send to the younger kids. And also, don't be influenced too much by the influencers. You know, that's a very small percentage, you know, because that's not a reality. You know, not everyone's going to be a gamer. Not everyone's going to be you know, on a reality show and come out and make a success of it. You know, that's a small percentage of people, but the perception of it is that you can be a success. And yes, people have made a fantastic career out of it as well. But if you really want to focus on what careers are available, or what career opportunities are available, then I think it's down to us as an industry to be showing and showcasing what those opportunities are, and working, you know, the councils, the governments, the whatever you might want to call them, they need to be spending more time in encouraging that into the school, rather than worrying about what an old curriculum system is going to be that's absolutely irrelevant to what are to the skills that you need to actually be involved in business.
Yeah, I think everything you touched on there is the reason I'm doing it. You know, the narrative. I think the key issue we're having moving the energy industry forward is the narrative. You know, because it comes back. The narrative then comes back to politics. It comes back to then the how people grow up and how they see energy. Yeah, they don't want to work in it because it's seen as a polluting, awful industry. So I think it's
seen as dirty word. They're like, oh, I don't want to be in that, because they're seeing that negative narrative, and it shouldn't be the case, because what you're doing is you're scaring off the future engineers that we require, regardless if we're doing oil and gas or not. Yeah, that's the problem.
And ultimately, the future of energy is in the people that are going to lead it in the future. Yes. So we need people like me. Not that I technically I have very few idea of how. I don't really know how a rig works, all these kind of things. I couldn't tell you, but you know, I think
don't want in there, do I?
No, I think it's a shame, because it's an industry which I always say it underpins all others. You know, and I think that has been lost.
Mm-hmm. But it's not just that. I mean, this is probably a key point. Mm-hmm. It's not. There's accounting, there's logistics, there's healthcare, there's everything in around that industry. It's not just we get too focused on, oh, there's a man in a boiler suit. Well, there's not. This industry is so diverse. Half of my operations team are run by women. And I think that's a narrative we need to get away from as well. Is this industry is open to everyone, and and that's what. But with younger people coming through like myself and leading teams and leading that, we're getting away from that old school mentality and that sort of, let's call it your perspective of what it might look like as an industry. It's slowly starting to go because there is younger people coming through being successful in this. I can name a handful of them, and it might even be worth possibly following up and doing a podcast with these, because I see them. They also inspire me. And I take motivation from them when you see that and you go, I remember this guy a few years ago when they were doing, they were a pipe fitter and now they're running a tech-based business doing, raising multiple millions of pounds, etc. We can do it. And we are the future of the generation and we are the future of the energy. So why wouldn't we be shouting about that?
Yeah. And I think this is the reason I want to do. I want to get we were talking about it yesterday as well, the younger generation connect to stories over.
They do.
So I think getting the stories out there, helping people understand that, getting behind, bringing the people that are leading energy out of the shadows. 'Cause I think for years, no one knows who's leading Chevron, no one knows who's leading Shell, no one knows anything about these people. But they're interesting people, and I think, I say this all the time as well, I think we work in energy because we honestly think we're having a good impact in the world. Yeah. But other people think we're in energy to take advantage of the world. And that's the crux of the issue, I think, that I want to change.
Those people they're uneducated on the reality of it. And that's the problem.
I think the education, as you said, is what's needed.
And I don't understand how a lot of these people have got time to glue themselves to roads and things like that and go and spray paint over buildings. I mean, who's paying for that? That's another thing. And and also it's a bit naive. It's a bit of a naive mindset. I'll probably get paint thrown over my building now for that comment. But anyway, make sure it's teal. So it goes with the colours. But I think coming out and having a voice, and maybe people like myself putting our faces online to send that message, I think is important. There's a lot of people want the recognition, the validation for the wrong reasons. I genuinely believe I'm here for the right reason, and it's not really for personal gain, but more for sharing a story, sharing a journey. I've made so many mistakes, like too many to name and too many to admit on camera. But what it does do is it shapes your character. And, what it has done is by being involved in this industry, I'm very thankful for what it's given me. And I'm also incredibly excited about what it's going to give me and it's going to give the future generation as well. So I will do everything to champion that and never have a negative narrative around what's been said about it, regardless of what the mainstream media might want to push or what stories might want to be selling, etc. But I think we definitely need to be, encouraging the older generation to come out of the shadows and inspire and encourage the younger people to come into it.
Exactly. And one thing I want to ask you as well, I think in June you were appointed non-executive director at Neccus.
Neccus.
You said Neccus, okay.
Yeah.
Which, providing guidance, oversight. Basically, explain what that is and how important that is for you, because now you're involved in kind of the future of Scotland's energy transition, decarbonisation.
Exactly that, for exactly that reason. That was the reason I got involved in that organisation. But it also needs the support of the big players.
But this is focused on oil and gas?
No, it's focused on carbon capture.
Okay.
But we're moving away to fully focus on reducing the carbon footprint or working or decarbonising the industry across multiple industries.
Yeah.
So it was originally set up for carbon capture, utilising and storage and focusing on that industry. But we're a little bit, I would say we're not as advanced in that sector as we should be as an industry, not as an organisation. But as an organisation, we provided that platform. You've got the Acorn project. I mean, there's people that will listen to this that, have heard about the Acorn project for 10, 20 years. It's still not been confirmed.
What is the Acorn project?
So it's a carbon capture project run from Peterhead Power Station down in southern England.
Okay.
Right, and there's a big infrastructure needed for that. Now, I'm not the one that's going to come on here and say yes, no, what should be done, what shouldn't be done, and how much money should be spent. That's not what I'm here to do. But what if we don't support that project and we don't invest? Then we're sending the wrong message at that point. So by joining the organisation, what it does, it got me a seat at the table. I'm involved in that industry, but it got me a seat at the table, and and we've been supportive as a business to that. I fully champion the team and the members that are involved in that. But we need to maintain our members because we're a non-for-profit. That money relies on us putting on events, and we have an event coming up in October. So, we'll be hopefully showcasing that, and then we're going to be doing another one in March. Date's still to be confirmed. But we need the support of the big companies to enable us to get that message and bring us all around the table to have that formative discussions to ensure that we're making sure that message is heard loud and clear. And we're getting there. And that was one of the reasons I when I was kindly asked to join the board, that I said, well, yeah, that aligns with what we're doing. It aligns with what my objectives are, and it also gives me a voice to sit around the table and have an input. As little as that might be, it's still an input.
Yeah, I think the idea of getting a seat at the table is key. I think we're all fighting to get that seat at the table at some point.
But getting us it's getting us all a seat at the table. If we can get that voice heard, and we can get that message clearly across, then that's going to be incredibly important.
And for my last question before we wrap up, before the end of every interview, I ask the guest to basically pose a question to the audience about something we've spoken about and something they should go away and reflect on. It could be about mindset, business lessons, leadership, the energy transition, anything you think the audience should go away and reflect on.
Well, I think, how do they expect, or what do they expect from us as industry leaders, business owners, etc., to inspire and encourage the next generation into engineering the energy transition? How do we do that? So that would be my message to the people.
Why would that be your message?
Because I think we need a clear narrative, we need clear objectives, and we need a clear understanding of where we're going from a policy perspective as well. Because if you don't have that, there's uncertainty. And then that makes it difficult for us to create our structures and our strategies around where that business focus needs to be. If we're hiring people, we're encouraging people to join the industry, how can we do that without knowing where our clear strategy is going to be? So that would be my message, possibly.
Jordan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, as I said before, and I think the conversation has gone as I wanted. I think we've covered a lot, and I hope you enjoyed it, and hope it won't be the last time.
Appreciate it. No, thank you. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.